And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. You have found Margaret, your party host for tonight's stream party. I'm an eclectic reader and historical writer and sometimes speculative fiction, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, JD Estrada.
Who is in Atlanta, Georgia. And even though it's not as cold as other places, I need this to nurse a cough that I have because I love collecting coughs, apparently. I am the author of 21 books. That includes nonfiction, middle grade poetry, urban fantasy, horror in Spanish, and A Partridge and a Pear Tree.
Yes.
And I'm also the official, original Double O Bananas, and he will be making a comeback this year. So stay tuned.
Oh, all right. All right. Yes. So, JD and I are here, so subscribe down below to his channel if you are not already subscribed. He does wonderful writing experimental posts as well as putting out a lot of books, which is really fun in all different genres.
And lately, a lot of taste tests.
Yes, a lot of taste tests, which is why I put the chocolate bar on your thing. And on the other side, they don't have a boogie board, but they had a surfboard. So I popped that in because
that is a
yeah.
crime. I need to help my sport so that there's an emoji of a bodyboard thing.
Bodyboarding, yes. So we are here tonight because we're doing our second stream party. So this is basically helping people watch the backlist of Authortube Writing Conference presentations. We've had 2 great years of people doing original presentations on writing craft and publishing tips and processes. And so that's like over 100 different videos on these playlists. And so to get the word out about them and sort of process at a deeper level, I'm inviting people over and we're doing a little watch party. Yeah, and AWC is a free nonprofit making venture. So if you want to pitch in some money and get some cool merch, like, I don't know, socks or notebooks, because every writer needs both. Oh boy, he's wired and he's gonna show the socks.
I gotta take the headphones off.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to use the headset. What?
Yeah. So yeah, he had the wireless headphones on, but they were creating noise, so we had to go to the wired and
The pants are too tight. Blame me for using tight pants. The thing is that if I use it from the left side, you can't see the logo, which is on this side.
Yeah. But they're cool. They look like good socks.
They are good and they are comfy. I'm not saying that because I care about you guys and I like the Authortube Writing Conference. This is me objectively speaking as a sock aficionado who loves socks. These are comfy socks. And what I like is that the logo, I'm gonna injure myself.
You can't do this on camera, JD?
No.
It's the pants. Just blame the pants.
I will blame the pants, but I can show a picture. And
oh yes.
You put on. I like it when you put on the sock and the design doesn't warp or anything. That's
like stretch weird.
But it stays solid, it stays red. Plus, they're comfy. They're not the comfiest socks I've ever had because they're not designed mainly for comfort, but they are comfy.
Yes.
Impromptu sock review.
Sock reviews from a sock aficionado. I like it. I wanted to say hello to the folks in the chat because I feel like we might have some author friends. So I also started a discussion about movie snacks because as we're treating this as a watch party, and we'll get into the presentation in a second, but I brought snacks. So last time I revisited Reese's Pieces, which I hadn't had since I was a kid, and I changed my mind. They're actually really good. So they're now dangerous. So this time I figured I'd go with Junior Mints, heartily joined by another old favorite that hasn't been tapped in a while, Scotch.
Whiskey and mint. I am curious about that combo because whiskey and chocolate is sensational. Whiskey and chocolate and mint.
We'll see. So JD, nursing his cough, is going with rose tea and water, which is a very sensible choice. We've got Anita A.F. Stewart in the house. Hello. We've got Just Eva. Hello. We've got Capo Rosales. Hello. And Deidre Writes Romance dropping by to say hi and smash the like button.
You can massage it too.
Yes. Yes.
massage.
Oh, we've got some dodgy internet. Oh, sorry to hear that. A good effort on the socks. Jocelyn Carter saying hello. Lady Jane saying hello. Just even giving full points for the sock efforts. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Back to writing. Good for you. Eva's put up the link for socks and notebooks as well, as JD was showing off. We've got Vina, Miss WC Reader. Hey, hey, hey. Okay, so welcome everyone in the chat and welcome everyone watching on replay and the presentation. So we're finally getting to the presentation. I chose Leslye Penelope's channel. She did a really good presentation on story Bibles. And so I went back because in the flurry of the 3-day conference where there's like multiple presentations happening at once in 2.5 days and you're helping manage things and making the tech happen and all this stuff, you often don't get to like concentrate on the thing you're watching. You're looking for bugs and stuff. So this is when I got to like actually listen to what she was saying on the rewatch. And I took some notes, had some like questions about your experience. And I think JD did the same. So I was going to ask about like previous story Bible experience. And then maybe we'll go to the poll to ask if people in the chat have ever used a story Bible.
Okay, so have I used a story Bible as defined by Leslye or the approach that she did? No, as I did, I don't do NaNoWriMo. I do Nano Estrada. So I do an Estrada Bible.
Okay.
If you can read it, this
We can't see the writing. I can see the index cards, but the writing is not contrasted enough. Oh, there we go. Yep.
There you can see that was the kitchen. This is the backyard.
Are you writing out descriptions?
I am writing. I am writing out descriptions, and I shall tell you how I use these. And this is Captain Jane, and she appears in the bathroom chapter because that became this. And Given to Fly, it's my first adventure novel, and you can see that little house on the side. That is Odd Manor. And part of the adventure in this book is exploring each room. We explore the bathroom, we explore the kitchen, we explore the backyard, so on and so forth. The library, and the inspiration for different characters in different locations. So, say that I had a chapter. Basically, I would take all the cards from all the characters that appear there. I would lay them down. The chapter description, I actually have a description, a general overview of what's going to happen in the chapter and the location and any other pertinent information. I would lay them out in front of me and I would write in my notebook because I'm a Cro-Magnon that way. I write by hand and then I transcribe.
Cro-Magnon? Is that like a period of human history?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a caveman.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a Cro-Magnon. No, that sounds pornographic now.
No.
So that's the way that I did the process. I think this has been probably, it was just the right time, and I had thought about this book for so long, and I had everything fleshed out, and I was so organized that I was actually able to do that in a NaNoWriMo. I did it in a NaNoWriMo. I edited it for about a month and a half, and it was done. And I haven't done that with my upcoming novel. And part of me is like, okay, next time you're going to do another series Bible or something to organize yourself.
Yes. Dude. Yeah, Jocelyn saying I never consider using note cards. It might be pretty helpful though, giving it a second thought.
No, it was very helpful because I could reference it. It was basically Scrivener in real life.
Yeah, the binder. Eloise says, I'd made the attempt at making a big binder. That was a big waste of paper and time. Now I've got everything in Milanote, which I'm guessing is like a digital database organizer.
No, Milanote.
Excuse me, I haven't even started on the whiskey and I'm already getting grainy. But I use these a lot for character profiles and like schematics of what does the hill look like? What does the house look like? What is the plan or the layout so that I'm not constantly orienting myself? So this is like
Mm.
field, house, stream. Like I'm drawing my little map, which didn't make it into the book, but it's helpful to point to. Okay, so
There's a lot of things that don't make it into the book that just help us
yeah,
see the story and paint a picture, like a clear picture, period.
yes. So I'm going to pop up the screen share here so we can get started. And how we're going to do this is we're going to play it and then listen to Leslye as she goes through. And if something she says spurs a bit of commentary or a question, we'll stop and like kibitz a little bit. Sound good? Yes. I think that's what he meant to say. Although now I can't find the layout that I just made that was going to be really good. Is it that? Is it that? Is it that? Nope. Where'd it go? Oh, crying out loud. Okay, well, I will do this after we start. So let me start it on the tab and then fix the layout. We'll fix it in post.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Creating a Story or Series Bible. I'm
She has a
Leslye
great
Penelope.
voice, by the way.
I am a fantasy author, a podcaster, a YouTuber, and I love talking about story Bibles. I'm going to use the terms story and series Bible interchangeably, but we'll talk about what they each are in more detail in the presentation. You can learn more about me at my websites. lpenelope.com is my author website. I have a podcast and YouTube show called My Imaginary Friends, and you can learn more about that and my courses at myimaginaryfriends.net. So today we're going to be talking about story Bibles. We are going to go over what a story Bible even is, the elements of a story Bible, techniques and tools for creating them, and then tips, strategies, and maintenance, because they are the most useful when they are up to date and they have all of the information that you need in them. So that brings us to our first question. What is a story Bible? So a story Bible can be thought of as the canonical documentation of your characters, settings, objects, histories, and other elements in your fictional world. The actual title or the words story Bible, as far as I know, they come from the TV and film world. So when you work on a television show, when you create a television show, usually you have to pitch it and you come up with a series Bible for that. And that looks different for each creator, but it's going to have a little bit about the synopsis of what the show is about, the main characters. You might have sketches or other mock-ups of characters, scenes, settings, locations, and costumes, props, important things like that. So we take that idea and bring it to our stories. Whenever you're writing a novel or a series, you're going to need to know like what's in it. You're going to need some sort of documentation of the canon for yourself. And then maybe for your fans, or if you sell the rights to a TV or film deal, those people, the producers, the writers, might need to know more information about your world, your characters, all of that stuff. So we use a story Bible to hold all the planning and the reference materials for your story or your book series. It's like your own personal Wikipedia. And there are lots of ways to do this. You can actually create your own wiki. Anything from a notebook, keeping it on pen and paper, dead tree media. It's not my preferred method, but we're going to talk more about that.
Okay, stop. Okay, so dead tree media is my favorite, and I know you handwrite your stuff too. So hey, we're good people to choose for this.
Yeah.
So I thought it was funny that it's called a story Bible just to start, because especially the word like canonical. I know that's been co-opted by fantasy people who are very, very serious about their fanaticism.
That's
But
not canon.
yeah, like a canon ship, for example, like someone who's English, who for whom English is not their first language would have no idea what is shipping, what is canon, what does all this mean when applied to fantasy, right? But yeah, so calling it a story Bible and using that term was a bit off-putting for me because it's just got religious overtones. And I like to think about it a different way in terms of like why it's called that. And that comes from the theater world that she referenced because when we had theater in high school, the director, the drama teacher, had this like binder this big, all the colored tabs, like all the things they would need for the show, the lighting, the sound, the actors, the cues, whatever. And it was thick. It was thick. And that's why we called it a Bible. So, in case anyone is wondering,
Mm.
that's where it came from in my head. So, obviously, that's canon. I just wanted to stop and say that early. And I had a question about Pinterest. Um, because
Pinterest is something that I use, but I don't use. It's that I use it and then I forget that I was using it.
I haven't used it for years, and whenever a Google result takes me to Pinterest, I go, "No, I don't wanna log back in," because I feel like it's just
It's a
it
rabbit hole.
started it's a what?
It's a rabbit hole. The thing is that it hasn't been an effective rabbit hole. It's not something that I reference to, and it's something that I should pull from rather than reference to. Meaning, I should have. I'm probably going to save stuff that I find on Pinterest in a folder on my computer rather than go to Pinterest.
Oh, because it's a chore to get in there and because they, like, make you go through all these new steps now because they're trying to, like, track everything you do?
I don't know. It's just it's like Goodreads. I use Goodreads just to track what I'm reading and my reviews and stuff like that. As an author tool for me, it's an absolute waste.
Right.
I know for some people it works. And Pinterest for research, it is, if you use it properly, it works. But for me, it just doesn't stick in the sense that I do the work, I do the legwork, and then I don't reference it.
Well, I did the legwork years ago in terms of, putting things in different boards, and it worked much more like an actual collage board where you could just pin things or tape things and create a collage in different topics. And then it started getting into, well, did you want to download it this way? And, do you want to click on this ad? And it got very monetized. And that's when I was like, this is too clunky for me to use. It's no longer easy for inspiration and filing, and so I just haven't been back in years. So,
The thing is that at least for image searching, it's actually much better than Google. Google used to be awesome in terms of searching for images, and uh, I don't know, 5 updates ago, whatever that means in time, searching for images has been kind of crappy.
really?
Um, I can still find it, but then you click on it and the resolution absolutely sucks. And
Mm,
you go like you have to visit the site, and it's super cumbersome, which almost goes against the ethos of what Google is supposed to be.
mm. Okay, so if your reference section for your author efforts is very visual heavy and you do use Pinterest, tell us what we're missing out on here because I think JD and I are on the same side, and Leslye might be on the other in terms of like knowing how to use Pinterest better. I don't know.
My bad.
We had a question about Dead Tree Media from Cat Paw. We just mean paper, like, yeah, putting pen on paper. We're old school folks.
We are
Vina,
geriatric millennials.
exactly. I was gonna mention that when you said tight pants, and then I thought I'd just leave it.
We are old.
Vina mentioned she keeps notes in a Discord right now, which I don't know how.
I've tried to use Discord, and wow, do I show my age when I try to use Discord. It's like I just
There are many functionalities within Discord. Some I can do very easily, and some I'm like knocking on a door that just won't open for me.
and with Reddit, I know people who can maneuver across Reddit and find anything. My wife is one. I try to look for
Oh,
stuff,
nice.
and for me, I just feel dumb and old. And it's like, how about no? How about I stay with my tried and true methods of being an old school sleuth.
Yeah, Reddit is scary for me, so I haven't really tried it much. Nicole's Bookish Nook is here. Hello. I use Scrivener's note section to track things. That's the extent of my tracking skills. Um, uh, cool. It is in my head. I'm not sure what that means. Um, Okay.
A lot could be in my head.
A lot.
I don't know.
Maybe. Okay. Well, we'll keep going and see if that resolves itself. Yeah, Google went downhill. Oh, and Anita's recommending, for all you Dead Tree Media people, she has published an organizer for this stuff and a digital version. So if you get on over to AF Stewart's site or possibly Ko-fi page, I think that's where that might be built.
Probably.
Okay, so let's keep going here.
Go on. So it's your own encyclopedia or Wikipedia for the people who don't remember encyclopedias. If you're a little too young for that, think of it like that, your reference points. And it's going to help you as an author, like even if no one else ever looks at it, which most of the time, no one else will. But even if it's only for you, it'll be so helpful for you. Trust me on this. So is this you? You are working on a multi-book series. You don't write particularly fast. I mean, there are some people out there writing a book a week, books a month, multiple books in a month. But that might not be you. It's not most of us. I don't think it's definitely not me. Maybe it takes you more than a year to write a book. Over the course of several weeks, months, or years, you are going to forget things that happen in your own story that you are writing. You might want to write a sequel at some point in the future. Maybe you know you're going to write a sequel. Maybe you've already planned out your 12-book series. But even if it's just 1 or 2 books, or if you write a book that you intend to be a standalone and it's popular and people want more of it, you're going to come back and write a sequel. And you might still have to reread the books that came before this one or the next one. But having the story Bible will make it a lot easier. You're just a regular person with a regular memory who just loses track of details in your book. This happens a lot with animals, I've found, and you'll hear other authors talk about this too, where it's hard to keep track of an animal that doesn't have a lot to do. It's not like the plot doesn't surround, the dog, but there is a dog, and I have dogs and cats, and I want to sometimes put them in books, but they tend to wander off, and then you get to the epilogue, you're like, oh, what happened to Spot?
I would never forget my dog.
Or maybe you want to co-write.
Never would I forget my dog or any animal, because I don't know how many times I've heard, oh, you have to see this movie. And I'm like, does the dog make it? And they go like, oh, I don't want to tell you because it's got spoilers. And I go like, so that means that the dog dies. No, but you're going to love it because you're a dog lover. And I'm like, that is why I'm asking. Does the dog die? And then they go like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so I don't need to watch Marley and Me. I've had that 8 times in my life, plus a 9th time with my wife's dog. I'm good. For me, secondary characters might wander off and do stuff like that. But an animal, if I include an animal, it's for a specific reason. And it's because, man, I don't know how many small tidbit moments, magical moments where you connect with an animal. I was driving. I was walking across the trail, and I see a deer, and the deer looks at me, chewing on something, and I go like, he looks at me, goes, and then just wanders off. I don't know where he went, because that's our little encounter was that little nugget of gold that I still treasure to this day. You're on mute.
Damn it. So you keep track of your animals, but sometimes in your head rather than in a binder is needed? Here's what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that with animals and something that light, I'm not going to have an issue with. Part of the reason that I agreed with you on getting this topic is because in the novel that I'm working on now, I lost track of pretty primary or secondary characters that have weight to them, and suddenly they magically appear in 2 places at the same time, and that's what happens when you write a chapter 1 week and then several weeks pass and you write another chapter.
Yeah. What's funny is someone mentioned the animals in the second book of the trilogy being like really noticeable, and that was a real selling point for the book. And I was like, really? Okay. People pick up on different things, and you never know. So
whatever sells a book.
Exactly.
I love the font. You do you.
Right. Okay.
or write in a shared world with other authors. And more than one person has to be on the same page about the story, the world, the characters, the rules, all that stuff. Collaboration is a really good reason to create a story Bible or a series Bible. Or you just don't want to waste time searching through your manuscript or manuscripts to find details about your character. Like, what was his eye color or her height, what they were wearing? What was her sister's name? What was the aunt's name that I mentioned in chapter 3? She has to come back in chapter 20. Do I remember? If I don't know what chapter it was, at some point in Act 1, I mentioned so-and-so's name, and now I have to find it. There's tons of reasons why you might want to keep really detailed records so that you don't have to search or read through your entire manuscript to find these details. This is where the story Bible comes in. So what are the elements of a story Bible? So I've broken this down into 7 parts, and they are a space to plan your book or your series, a space for characters, for groups, for the entire world and the world building details. And this is regardless of what genre you write, whether you're writing speculative fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, or contemporary, historical, our world. You're still doing world building, and the Story Bible is a great place to keep all of those details. Your timeline and events, the places and locations, and then if you are doing some sort of speculative fiction, then magic, or technology if you are into science fiction.
Okay, stop. That's my cue to pause, by the way. So elements of a story Bible. I thought this was interesting. I like that she has not emojis, logos. What is it called when you have a symbol of something pictorial to represent an idea? I don't know. What are words anymore?
An icon.
An icon. Thank you. How many of these are in your version of a story Bible? Because like you were saying in the chat, it's whatever works for you. And, you know, you have the index cards as an example. I have like one of this for last year's efforts. How many of these elements are you putting in yours?
This is one of the things that I saw that I was like, that can help to identify, and it just gets you in the groove. And the things that how she breaks it down, because I would only think characters, location, etc. If you have a complicated magic system and have something that you can reference, that's something that I'm gonna have to use for a future project. Because it's going to be dense, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And keeping track of everything, so that you don't contradict yourself. I think the main thing with the magic system or any sort of lore is that you don't want contradictions unless it serves the purpose within the story. You don't want it accidental. You want it intentional.
Right.
But icons? Hell no.
No. You don't have to have icons. I just couldn't think of the
Okay.
word. Anita's saying spelling character names is another reason to have an easy reference. And oh my God, yes. Someone pointed out to me that I'd spelled McLean 2 different ways in the description on Amazon. And I was like, amateur mistake. Yeah, you want somewhere where you can go, wait, does it have an A in it or not? And look at it and like drill it in. Because when it's been 5 years and you're like, I don't remember anymore, you need a place to go back and check it.
No, if anything I've learned is that when I do another series, it's gonna be much closer together, and I'm gonna be able to reference everything and try to have everything fresh. Yes, I might write something in between, but not take, between one thing and another.
Years.
The beginning of the human cycle was 2007. 2006. Took me 7 years to write it. It took me 7 years to write it and edit it and do everything. So 2006, published 2013, second book comes out 2016, and I've taken my sweet ass time for book number 3 because it's a bastard middle child syndrome, because I love Shadow of a Human, and it's got 9 reviews, and people go like, oh, when you finish the series, I'll buy it. And I go like, that's not how it works, but thank you.
But thank you, he says with the cigar like George Burns.
Yeah, because
you won't remember George Burns.
I do remember George Burns, and I think he's the most charming god and devil that I've ever seen on film.
I haven't seen him on film. I only remember seeing him in commercials when I was growing up with his cigar, or like on game shows or something.
When you press play, I'm gonna look for the movie title, and I'm also gonna add it and see if I can find it. That movie was
Okay,
a lot of fun, and
okay,
I don't know, he was a small old grandpa that smoked stogies, and
okay.
I'm a fan. And
All
his
right,
name is
you
George.
find that for me. My original comment on this was gonna be that as a pantser, I do not have certain things going through. So for me, when I look at the timeline and the planning, those are things that would be absent from my Bible if I'm trying to like do things as I'm going. And then I would have to go back and put it back in after I'd finished. But by that point, as an indie author, if I'm finished and I'm very sure that the timeline is not going to change, that means like, oh crap, I need to be doing the marketing. I need to be doing the formatting. I need to be sending this to the proofreader. Like there's all that stuff happening at that point. So I feel it is very difficult for me to go back and go, all right, let me write down all these little details that I know and put them into some graphical format somehow and digital that will not fail me later when I need to come back. It's just my brain is in such a like frantic place at that point. So maybe Leslye has a hint or a clue or I don't know, words of hope for me at that point. Okay.
So, the first section of the Story Bible is for planning. Now, these are the elements that I like to put into my Story Bibles, and I recommend them for other people. But, this is obviously you're going to customize it to your own needs to be exactly the way that you want it to be. So, I'm just outlining the things that I do, the things that I recommend for creating them. What was her?
What happened apart from you being muted again?
Was that a stop
That
motion?
that was a stop one.
Okay.
But
I hit instead of pausing the middle, I hit something on the timeline, so it went backwards. So
yeah, so it's a bit more forward, and I do need what's on the screen because for me that
here?
was that.
Okay.
If for me, I would do the story Bible before writing the thing. Maybe someone would do it when they do a second draft or something. I don't know. Having a log line or a blurb before you write the damn book, that might be frightening to people. Um,
Ooh,
but it is
explain.
it is such a pain in the ass for everyone to condense their book into a blurb or a log line.
Mhm.
If you do it beforehand, it gives you such I'd never thought of it. For me, it's like I wrote the thing, I know what it's about. I'm a copywriter by trade, so I can condense things pretty decently. But to do it beforehand and have that as a reference, holy crap! Have that the vision statement. It might help if you're struggling or you're having one of those either if you're getting a bout of imposter syndrome or having one of those sucky days where it's hard to be a writer. But the log line and the blurb, doing that beforehand, it's going to save you such a headache when you have to write it because it's something that a lot of people struggle with. It's
Yeah.
something that fortunately I don't mega struggle with, but doing it beforehand, I think that would be super beneficial.
Yes, it's actually reminiscent of my word for the year this year, which is anchor, because you will essentially be giving yourself an anchor to come back to and be like, okay, what am I aiming for? What is the feeling I'm looking for? Or what is the point or the message? And that'll be like, okay, well, then this character needs to go back this way. So, yeah, it's good. Oh, and this. That's for you, JT. Okay.
For other people, but this is obviously you're going to customize it to your own needs to be exactly the way that you want it to be. So I'm just outlining the things that I do, the things that I recommend. Take what you will from this and add, remove as you need to. So, a vision statement. I always start my books with a vision statement. And I go through this process in the Story Seed workbook that I have. It's a mini course that I offer in terms of how do you start with a new project idea? How do you get to the point where you're ready to write? Before you even start plotting, there's several stages that I've learned to do over the course of writing almost a dozen novels and novellas that includes this vision statement. So it means, what do you want the story to be? So
How many times have you heard someone, I got a great idea, and then they try to explain the idea and they have no idea what they're talking about? This is this is where a story Bible would be very beneficial to check yourself and polish your idea.
Well, wouldn't you just have a lot of like starts of story Bibles that end up in the recycling can?
Depends.
Maybe.
The thing is that for me, it's very important to I always tell people that one of my top recommendations is to have capture tools, whatever the hell works for you. If it's
Yes.
a note on your phone, fine. If it's a notebook, fine. If it's a napkin, fine. I've used all of these in anything that you can imagine. Um, one poem that won me an award, I actually wrote it originally in a napkin, and the editing was minimal. So basically, what I wrote when I left the theater, and I was like, guys, give me a second, with popcorn greasy hands. That's
Yeah.
what ended up winning me
Oh
an
my
award.
God.
It won me $75 on one occasion. It won me $50 on another occasion.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
because I wrote about the Marquis de Sade. But there are people that want to get into writing. I've got an idea, and it's like, yeah, you have the ghost of an idea, and you have to give it more flesh.
Mm.
This can help you flesh it out and feed it. And I think something that I really enjoy about taking this approach is that if you have a story Bible and it's polished and you read it and you go like, man, I love outlining and getting great ideas, because when I read the outline and I'm excited about the outline, that keeps me excited about the book. And it also keeps me real about the vision of the book. A lot of people write and they're going to be querying, and those are some deep trenches. And sometimes, the feedback that you get is, I know some people that do anything to try to please a publisher so that they can get an agent or they can get representation or stuff like that. To each their own. I don't recommend it, because if something's gonna sap your soul, I'm always gonna say, don't do that.
Right. So you're talking about two different
Always.
non-starters, I think, and so the one where it's people who haven't written a whole thing yet and they have an idea. What I think of when I think of that image is a person who's had the same idea for a long time but hasn't gotten any farther with it, and that I think Story Bible might be a really great tool. I was thinking of actually myself not having the capture tools, which is the other thing you mentioned, which is story seed ideas. I'll get like split second ideas when I'm doing other things and be like, oh, does that have any steam behind it? I don't know. I'll think about it. And then it's like gone within 5 minutes. Like spirit that visited me was like, oh, there is no chance with this, sister.
No,
So
no, I have a notebook with ideas that is 15 years old, and there's story ideas there that I'm gonna eventually develop. And people go like, "Oh, are you really gonna use it?" I literally wrote a blog post with an idea of a topic that I wrote down 12 years ago, and I finally came around to do it this week.
see, I will go over old ideas, and every time I go back, it just feels stale. So at some point, I just need to cross them out and throw it away and like move on. But like continue writing down those ideas, because the more recent ones will have more, verve to them for me. So
It might, but the thing is that when an idea just doesn't let go.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
First off, I love that, because I know that it has staying power. Because if it has staying power, where your brain is going like, dude, write the damn thing. Someone is gonna read it, and you're gonna have tea in the collective unconscious in that little sector.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'll keep going here.
It can include the themes you want to explore, a belief about the world that your story promotes or exemplifies. I use the vision statement to help keep me grounded. And whenever I have problems with the story, like I get to the midpoint usually and things start to fall apart, my carefully plotted story just isn't so carefully plotted anymore. And I've had to change a bunch of things and I get down on myself. I come back to this vision statement. It's like, what did I imagine the story could be? And what am I really like? Why am I writing this in the first place? So that's in the Story Bible. The logline and the blurb. So doing those up front, like wherever you do them in the process, whether you do them before you start writing, which is a good technique to organize your ideas, or if you do them at the end when you're ready to hit publish, You're going to need a place to put them. So your log line is usually a brief 1 to 2 sentence summary of the story. And the blurb is the back cover copy. It's the short description of the book that you'll put on Amazon and the various retailers and the back of the paperback. Also, my outline goes in the planning section of the Story Bible. I'm a plotter, so I have an outline, I have a synopsis, I have lots of upfront materials that I need to gather and refer to during the writing process. And sometimes afterwards, like if the book has been on the shelf for a couple of years and I need to refresh myself, maybe I'm going to do an interview or a talk about it. And once the book is on the shelf, I forget all about it. Like I can't tell you the plots of certain books, especially when you write a lot of them. So you can refresh yourself with your whatever materials you use. Even if you're not a plotter, there might be something that you have outlined ahead of time, or just notes that you might have, bullet points, whatever. I put the synopsis in, so I go from my outline to the full synopsis. I also keep a file of questions that I gather and compile during the writing process. So when I come to something that I don't know and I want to keep moving and not get stuck, often because I have a deadline or getting stuck is it's a part of the process that, depending on what stage you're at, like when I'm at the beginning and I'm doing my first draft, I don't need to know all the details. I'm telling myself the story. It's revealing itself to me as I write it, even though I have a plot. So I keep just a bullet pointed list of questions of what I don't know about the story, the characters in the world. And then later on, future me will have to go and answer these questions and figure this stuff out.
Okay, stop. It's not smooth when I have to mute myself, so I may just try to not burp on camera or something. Anyway, questions. So here is where I'm curious because I need a better method. I normally draft in Scrivener and I load up on comments. This is where my questions end up. They end up in comment bubbles on the right, and it's like, what does this have to be? How old is this person? Like, where are they headed? What is the appointment with on this date? Like, whatever information they need to look up for the story. And then I have to go back and individually do them. And that process of individually answering these questions seems to suck all the joy out of it's not editing, it's not revising, it's fleshing out the story, but I want a better way to do this. And I'm wondering if anyone has tips or does it a different way.
Give me an example of how you did it. Just one small, not super extensive example.
So someone is reading from the paper. It's about a certain event in history that happens, and I want the paper article to sound real. So I need to go research something that has the sound of the portrayal of the event that happened in this place in this time, and it doesn't exist. So how do I answer that question?
If you can't get something that is at least a facsimile of reality, just make it compelling. Fuck it. Because if I know that you write historical fiction and stuff like that, but if you don't have a reference point and it's going to be fictional anyways, I don't know. Some people, it's like they either lose sleep over or only feel righteous if they attack someone because they didn't get something totally accurate. Fine.
Yeah, it's like something between, I know there are newspaper accounts that cover this event. I don't know if these people would have been reading them in their little house hundreds of miles away, but I also know that if they did, the reader in my time and place is not going to understand the same thing reading the same words. So how do I triangulate those three things and put something that'll be representative, but also, cue the right emotions in the reader today? So it's just there's so many little things of this that going through one by one, my brain just goes, no, not another one.
No, if you include too much of that, it's going to be draining. But you can, instead of method acting, you could do method writing and interview someone as if they had read the article, just to try to wrap your head around how they already processed. They already read it, they already processed it, and just try to get some answers that feel right, and then reverse engineer it. I'm spitballing and
That's
just
one comment. I'm asking more about how do I stop just going through multiple comments on the side of a Scrivener doc and make it more exciting. Like, I don't know that questions in Leslie's example is going to be any more exciting, but I need something that's like gamified. So I'm going to ask her that at the end.
How to gamify? Man, get a Jeopardy table and include your questions on there. It's like
For
newspaper
$200.
for $200.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if anyone has clues to make like plotting research tasks in the editing process easier for a person who's borderline ADHD, give it here. Okay.
I make a to-do list of things that I want to come back to. So it might not be a question. It might just be like a research note. Like, I know that I have to look into the architecture of castles. If they're going to build a new wing, what material would they use? Or whatever world building thing or character issue. It could be anything. There's just the to-do list so that I can keep my forward momentum and have one place to go to keep track of all these things that I know I want to do later. I also keep a list of characters. So there's different character section. There's a whole character section that we're going to talk about. But in this planning section of the Story Bible, I keep just a bulleted list of the characters that I can refer to quickly. So this does not include pictures, bio, height, weight, anything. It's just the character name and maybe a little bit about who they are. So, if it's someone else's cousin or mother or best friend, just as a reminder of who they are. And then I'll go into more detail in the actual character section with the full character profiles. So this is the next section. We go to the character section where we have these character profiles, where I keep all of the information, as much detail as I feel I need to know who the character is, things that I actually write, or even if it doesn't end up on the page in the book, these are the details of the character. So it includes their basic information like their name, age, height, weight, eye and hair color, maybe their job, things like that. Personality. I do a lot of character work at different parts of the writing process. So this might not be a first draft activity. This might be a final draft activity or right before the final draft. I'll go in and do a lot more character work, but sometimes I do it up front. And this can include their characteristics, like their positive and negative traits, the Myers-Briggs of it all. I use Enneagrams, which is another kind of personality typing system. So there's also archetypes. There's various methods of creating personality types that can be useful when you're creating characters. So that information goes in there and a little description about what that means. Maybe you use their sign, in Aries, and this is the particular part of Aries that they are, or if they're an Enneagram type 8 and that's a challenger and they're going to have these qualities, that goes there. Backstory, so personal history, wounding events, timelines. If I do a little first person character sketch, which I do sometimes for certain characters, usually main characters, and regardless of what perspective the book is in, even if it's in third person, I might try to get into the character's mind and just write a first person scene from some period in their history that is not even in the book. It's just a pivotal scene in their growth. Often it's the wounding scene, and that comes from the idea that characters have wounds. Lots of different character theories have that idea. I might put their timeline, so their birth date, their death date, if they die, but the time that specific actions have happened to them, and then their relationships, how they relate to other characters. So whether it's familial, friend, enemy, if they never meet another character, that kind of stuff gets recorded. Groups is the next section of the Story Bible. Now, groups is something that's flexible, and it really depends on the type of story and the genre. In fantasy, I'm often writing about nations or races, or, if in other kinds of speculative fiction, it might be a planet or a species. It could just be an ethnic group. It could be a religion. It could be a club. Groups can be kind of anything. So depending on the type of group that you have, you may or may not need the bulleted items below on the slide. So if I'm dealing in nations in one of my secondary world epic fantasy stories, then I'm going to go into the climate and geography of that place, the social structure, the government and economics, like all of the world building things happen there. Now, in the books where I'm writing in our world, more contemporary time period, I might not have, I'm not going to do the United States and their climate geography. I'm just going to have these shorthands that I know. But if it's taking place in another country that I'm not as familiar with, let's say I'm writing a story and they travel to Mozambique or something, then I'm going to have to do some research on customs, maybe the government, maybe the economics, depending on what impacts my story, and put that stuff here. If it is a religious group, whether it's a real one or an invented one, I'm going to put the beliefs and the rituals. Maybe there's specific clothing that they wear. Like I have in my Earthsinger Chronicles series, there are this order called the Sisterhood. They are basically like, nuns, and they wear specific clothes, and they have specific customs and rituals. And I would also do this for my invented nations. And then even in a contemporary or a real world story, like I have a book, The Monsters We Defy, which takes place in our world in Washington, D.C. in 1925. I don't necessarily need the climate and geography of DC. I grew up right outside of DC, so I'm very familiar with the muggy swampness of it all. But I did have to do a lot of research into fashion and clothing for the 1920s, and also the art scene, the music scene of Washington, DC. There were things that I wanted to bring to life in this real world community that required research. If I'm creating a brand new town, like the book that's coming out next year that I turned into my editor, I invented a fictional small town in the 1930s in the South, and I still had to go through a lot of the stuff. So what were they wearing in the 30s? What were common clothes? What is going to be unique to my town? Is it stuff that I'm creating out of whole cloth, or is it stuff that I've researched? All that stuff goes here. There's also like education, military, healthcare, medicine, family life. What does that look like? These are all the world building things that you need to do regardless of the type of world that you have. Because even if you're in our world, once again, you're still creating a space. You're creating a place that's fictionalized based on a real place. And you're going to adhere to certain norms. You're going to emphasize certain things. There are going to be certain people that are there. And maybe they're immigrants. Maybe you're going to deal with specific communities or specific age groups and fads, things like that. So the next section of the Story Bible is for the world. And it's another part of world building. And this and groups can kind of a little bit be interchangeable. It depends. It really, this is why you customize it to your own story and your own world. But when I think of the world as opposed to a smaller group, like even if it's a nation or a city or a club or an ethnic group, the world that you're building is going to have specific things in it, regardless, once again, whether it's our real world or your invented world. So there's going to be plants and agriculture. You're going to have it be dependent upon the location. So Washington, D.C. is going to have different plants and agriculture than Tempe, Arizona. Animals and creatures, if they're invented creatures, or if you are dealing with the buffalo, and you're writing something in the 1800s in the plains, keeping track of, where those characters or creatures are, where they come from, what are their habits, what do they eat, like how are you going to present them in the story? Food, what do people eat? Where does it come from? Do they hunt or fish? Are they getting it at the grocery store? Are they gardening? Religions, what do people believe in? All of these things can create conflict and all part of the rich tapestry of world building. And that's really what the Story Bible is about, keeping track of all of these details. Are there multiple religions, the customs, who are the adherents? So whereas in the group section, I might be focused on a specific group, here in the world, I'm listing out all of the religions that are at play potentially in the story. We go into language and lingo. So not just any constructed language that you might have in a speculative fiction story, but real world languages, and also slang, phrases that they might use, names of places, names of towns. If you're creating something, how does things sound? What are people's names? How are they named? Are there naming conventions that you're using? Sports, games, and leisure, keeping track of what they do for fun, and the pastimes, and the names and rules of the games. Once again, whether it's American football or the rest of the world football, aka soccer, or some invented game that you have. Transportation, how do they get around? How fast can they travel? How do they communicate across distances? Is it just our world and they have cell phones, or is it something else? And is it a situation where you can create conflict where maybe a character loses their phone and there's no more payphones? And these types of things can be important, once again, regardless of your world. So the technology in the story, are there scientists? Is there magical research? Where is the level? What year are you placing it in if it's our world? And if it's not our world, what is the level of technology present? And how does it impact your story? Also, timeline and events. So the history, what has happened up until now in your world, and how do these events affect your story? So for the Authortube Chronicles, Second World Fantasy, I did have to create about 500 years of history. I just did big picture things that people would talk about. I thought about, what do we talk about in history in our world? What were the big wars? What were the big disasters? What were the conflicts? And everything that I created in my invented history of my world was something that could potentially affect the events of the story. Now, in a non-speculative, realistic story, it can be similarly, it's still the history that affects your world. Like in The Monsters We Defy, it takes place in 1925 because there was an event in 1925 in DC that I wanted to have happen on the pages of my story. So I set it in that month so that I could reference that real life event, which happened to be a Klan march in Washington, DC. It's just a little tiny piece of the story, but that is part of the history. And researching the real life history allowed me to know what's going on in the story. And the calendar. I always have a calendar, regardless of, whether it's invented world or our world, just so I know, how long, over what period of time the story takes place. A good copy editor will be checking for this. They will be trying to see, okay, so 2 days ago was Tuesday, but today you just said it was Wednesday. So there's a mismatch there. In my secondary fantasy world, I actually invented new names for the days because obviously they wouldn't have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in this alternate world. I just went very easy and called it first day, second day, third day. But I know that, if you're doing fantasy or even sci-fi, there could be any number of ways that you decide to create your calendar. There are books where there's multiple moons and there's multiple months and days last for a week, because of the lunar cycle or whatever, like however you want to do it. And then there's places in magic. So you're keeping track of your locations, buildings, forests, landscapes, nations, planets, whatever it is, and describing them, things that you need in the story. Sometimes you might need a map of even a room. When you think about fantasy maps and these big locales, but often I need to diagram a room or the floor of a house so that I know where my characters are walking in space and time. And that can be something that you put in the story Bible and keep, so that if you have to take a break from the story and you've forgotten the layout of the house, you come back to it. Hey, here's my little sketched out by hand map that I drew. It doesn't have to be fancy, especially if it's not going in the book. And of course, your magic system, if you are doing a story with magic in it, describing it, how it's important to the story, what are the rules, what are the consequences, what are the costs, all that stuff can be templatized and should be included in the story Bible. Another section for the story Bible should be research. So keeping track of your notes, sources, links, bibliographies in the story Bible is really important, especially if you're doing any kind of research that you might want to come back to later, or you just want to know where you got things from. Like there's a lot of transference that happens. And I find myself when I'm researching, I want to make sure that I'm not plagiarizing anything. So I take a lot of notes, but I always leave a source for where the note comes from. So that in the future, I'll know. Once again, copy editors like to have this information. They will ask you questions. If you have a good copy editor, double checking your facts. And if you can be like, hey, I know this is true because I can point you to the book or the website because I kept track of it. I didn't do this early on in writing my books. And it's something that I learned to do later because of copy editors. And because also when I would go back to something, a longer series and realize I said this, but now I'm not so sure if it's true. And I want to feel more confident that the research that I have, that I know where it came from and that I can update it if necessary, or that I at least can attribute a source if I ever need to. And then once I started writing historical fiction, I wanted to include an author's note because I love to have the author's notes, especially in historical fiction. All kinds of fiction can obviously have author's notes, but it's really fun to read where an author got their idea or information for a specific piece of history that might be surprising or intriguing. And so having that bibliography, keeping those sources as I'm doing the research is really important. And there's a variety of ways that can happen. Right now, I'm keeping.
Okay, stop. So I wanted to stop at this point because the author note and the bibliography and the way that Leslye is mentioning them stand out to me as like a really great source for marketing as well. Because these are things you can share with your fans later on, like this tidbit, like see this blog post for more information, or the historical nerd that reads these things, I always want to go, ooh, but what about more about this? Or what about more about that? And so if you can share those out and they're following you on Instagram or on your blog or whatever, it's like, let me dole this out to you that I've already packaged and saved up and whew, easy. I mean, I was like, oh, yes. Yes. I want to ask if she does that and like how she transfers from one system to another. So that stood out to me as really awesome.
One of my questions is about whether she uses it for marketing. So real
Okay. We're a little behind, so we've gone through the past section without stopping because we sort of went through a lot of our comments early. So I'm gonna keep playing. I think I've got one more, but we'll try to get through it a little faster because Leslie's now in the back room waiting.
Doing all of my research in a program called Notion. I have done it in Scrivener, which is the program that I use to write my books. And there's other dedicated research software. If you've gone through a graduate degree, you might know of these other research and bibliography software that are specifically for that purpose. They might be overkill for the average writer, but there's lots of different ways to do it. You can just keep a text file. The very first version of this was a text file where we just dump in quotes and links, and just keeping track of it is super important. So some of the techniques and tools that can be used to create your own story Bible or series Bible. What I use now is Scrivener. I keep a Scrivener file separate from my manuscript that is just for the story Bible. That's specifically when I'm doing a series. If I'm just doing a single book, a standalone, then I will just use one Scrivener file for the story Bible and the manuscript. That's one of the wonderful things about writing in Scrivener. It's so flexible. It's got these sections available for story Bible type stuff. For all these sections that I'm talking about, you can create them in Scrivener, and that's always a really great thing to do. There are templates available for Notion, which is another software, which is more like a database. They call it a database software. It's hard to describe what Notion is. It's part database, part note-taking, part spreadsheety, but not quite. It's just a great all-around tool. If you're not familiar with it, there's lots of resources out there that will help you get started with Notion. I found it super helpful. I keep everything in Notion. I keep like my author stuff, from planning my podcast to all of the links for my books, all of the buy links, my bio, my author bio. I have a database of just notes that I take as I live my life, like things that I'm gathering. So yes, Notion is great, and it also can be great for a story Bible. The software Plotter can also be used. I've used it too as a story Bible. And there's another workshop at this conference on Plotter. I use lots of Plotter tools. I really like Plotter as well. And so sometimes it's a matter of trying out different things and seeing what works for you, what makes sense in your brain. I like to be very specific and really organized. I like having.
Sorry, I double clicked it and it made it big instead of stopping it. JD.
No, I was just saying you do you, whatever works for you.
Okay. Yeah.
Icons for things. So Notion and Scrivener work best for me for that. But if you're already using Plotter to plot your books, then sticking your story Bible there makes a lot of sense. Keeping the tools manageable, like not adding tools just to add them, unless that's your thing. Like sometimes that's my thing, and I like having a lot of tools, so no judgment. Other options for creating a story Bible are personal wiki software. I've tried that as well. And if you're more technical, that might be a thing you can do. There's personal wiki software like Wikipedia on your own computer, and then you can put it on your website, like in a folder on your server if you have a web server that allows for that. There's other specific software like Campfire and World Anvil that are used not just by writers, but by gamers and DMs and people like that. And then, of course, there's pen and paper. There is the old standby, which totally fine if that works for you. I do not like pen and paper, as I mentioned in the very beginning, because I like to be able to search my story Bible. I need to hit Command F and type in my character's name and find everywhere that it is. And then if I need to change the eye color quickly, or if just I have a question and I can't remember exactly where I put it in the story Bible, searching is so important. So
Okay, this is very true, but we're both like proponents of the old world slowness, but I do need the Command F, which is why I no longer write my first drafts. So
that's a whole other topic about what's functional or not. The main thing of having a physical one, it's just I can go walking and browse it. I can check it during lunch and not need to be on the phone. I'm on the screen so much that part of me needs to disconnect and have less screen time, especially when I'm doing something creative and something that I love and enjoy. So it's just whatever works for you.
Okay, and on that note, if Leslye is okay with that, I will bring her on, because I think this is a a sharing type of, there we go.
hey,
Conversation. Welcome.
hey y'all.
Thanks so much for coming on. I know
Sure.
late nights for East Coast people. But yeah, I how do you combine the best of both worlds, the digital and the pen and paper? I'm half and half with my system, and so I need to find a way to resolve this.
Yeah, I definitely have pen and paper as part of the process too. Not necessarily for the story Bible, but just the general, like every book I write has its own folder. I have these, like, there's actually one right here. These like plasticky kind of folders.
Okay.
And because I tried paper and the cardboard ones kind of rip. So I want something that's not going to rip.
Okay.
And then I print out a lot of worksheets. And then for every book, I have like this Kai here. It's like a moleskin notebook, and I put stickers on it. This one's kind of new. It's like a new book, and it's blank. So I write a lot of notes by hand. And then I have a lot of spreadsheets, I have worksheets, I have software. I also have a remarkable tablet that I use. So I'm all over the
The
place.
writing kind that picks up your own
Yeah.
writing. That's cool.
It's amazing. And so, yeah, like JD was saying, I'm on the computer all day long, every day. So when I can get off of it, that's great. And also, like there's something about brainstorming by hand, like just writing notes by hand that sometimes helps you solve problems and it like sticks things in your brain differently. So I go back and forth between writing in my notebook and then actually I just open up a text file on the computer to type.
TXT. Okay, that's the first time I'm hearing that one.
TXT. Maybe it's because I have a background, like I had a computer science minor in college.
Right,
So like
right.
I spent a lot of time in text files.
But for me, it's a writing hello, HELLO versus hello, and I write in cursive, and I switched from cursive to manuscript, molde puñeta,
like this printing or
block letters.
Yeah.
Block.
I went full Puerto Rican there. So I'm switching between those two as I write. So if someone analyzes my handwriting, I'd love to see. That's a can of worms that I'd love to see.
Yes. Okay.
And notebooks, I have like a whole shelf full of blank notebooks, and like I'm always trying to find things to put in them. So yes, notebooks are amazing. And the text file is just so you don't have the formatting, because that's what's good about writing by hand. There's just no decisions to be made. So I don't want to have to bold or italicize. I don't even want to have to name the file. Like for me, even like coming up with a file name for Microsoft Word is too much. So in a text file, and I use this program called BB Edit, so I can have a bunch of text files open that are not named, and it just like frees my mind in a weird way.
That's a notepad for me. On Apple, it's just a notepad. So yeah. Yeah. Except they eventually start archiving those, and I'm like, where'd it go? And I have to search and take it out of the trash can. And I'm like, oh, I almost missed it. So it's not a great system, but okay, that's good advice. So now that we've brought you on and this, really great question, did you want to say what you're working on right now and like what's coming out and what's new for Leslye Penelope?
Yeah, so I've got so far 2 books coming out this year. In March, I have the 3rd book in my Bliss Wars trilogy. It is called Brutal Fortress, and that one is self-published, and so that's a paranormal romance. It's like a portal fantasy romance also. It's many different things. But yeah, ending of that series. And then in June, I have a traditionally published book coming out. It's called Daughter of the Merciful Deep. And we'll be doing the cover reveal soon. I think I was actually mentioning it in that video because I was writing it whenever I was filming that. So that's my 1935 historical fantasy novel. So yeah, that's what's going on so far this year.
Very cool. Very cool. We've still got a little bit of the presentation to go, and I had one more point. JD, did you have points that you didn't write it down, but like, do you know if you've missed out on anything that you still want to ask about?
The main things that I wanted to react about the videos, I think we've already covered, and the others were just, I wanted to rewatch it and get fresh out of the oven questions for Leslye right now, and I already have 5. So no, I already have 4. So, and they're good.
Okay. Let me see here. If I'm fast forwarding to make sure, like the ending, because you took us to the very end with content instead of Q&A. So I'm like, tip, strategies, and maintenance. Let me share this so that we can just like tent pole.
The link is in the description. Feel free to reference that video multiple times and visit and like and subscribe.
Yes. And let's see. I had a question about that. And then you're sharing a little bit about the in Scrivener, the way you do the outlining, what it looks like, and took us through some of the cards and everything, and the decision. So one of the things you just said about the beauty of the text file is that it takes away the decision.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that's why. So yeah, that's probably a big important part of it. Okay. All right. So I don't want to make you watch yourself in a presentation. So I'd rather just have you and we could just ask our questions here. So just a reminder, everyone in the live chat, make sure you get your questions about story Bibles or anything Leslye Penelope related in. and we get to go first. So JD, why don't you ask your first question?
The first one, it's an icebreaker. It's always silly. How much do you like horses, and who's your friend in the chair in the back?
Oh.
Horses. I have never been on a horse. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm thinking, I think there was a pony at a party when I was 5, but like, I think I was too scared to ride the pony.
Oh.
Really? I asked because I misheard something in the video, and I was like, why did that resonate? And then you spoke about the animals, and I'm like, I'm gonna ask about horses. If you've seeing a horse in person, it's just a fantastic animal. How they're built, and
Yeah.
I've ridden horses, and it's just an experience. So that's my icebreaker.
Oh, that one is Stokely on the chair. He might have been walking around. He's curled up, and yeah. There's another one that might show up too.
It's like a throw pillow, and suddenly there's eyes in it.
Right. Don't sit on me.
Did you bring movie snacks? That was the other question I was going to ask.
Oh, I brought tea, which is my constant companion here.
Yes, that was JD's as well. Excellent. I went the no good, very bad route. So
you're here for fun.
Yes, exactly. So let's see. One of my questions way back at the beginning, and maybe you can shed some light on this, was about Pinterest. And so JD and I both like did the legwork and like compiled stuff in Pinterest, whether it was book related or maybe professional related, did the work. But then it sort of changed. It got monetized. It changed how it did things. And like, it's no longer easy, like to go in and grab things or reference. And so I don't use it anymore. And neither does he, because he doesn't want to point people to it. So are you using Pinterest in a like flash forward neutral way, or do you two resent it in its current form?
I use Pinterest. I use it so little that I didn't realize it had changed and done all kinds of weird things.
Yeah.
Other books, earlier books, I will, for my self-published books, I usually do a Pinterest board when I'm getting ready to talk to my cover designer. And I pull together ideas or inspiration. And like, okay, this is what this looks like with the series, Bliss Wars. It is futuristic, like I said, paranormal romance, but it's dystopian. Alternate San Francisco.
Is that what Angel Born is the first one of?
No, this was in Savage City is the first one.
Savage City. Okay.
Yeah. And there's dragons, there's shifters. It's a whole weird thing. So I had to pull together all these post-apocalyptic city images to show him what I wanted. Okay. And so that's really what I use Pinterest for. Because otherwise I'm just saving images. Well, I just don't use it that much. So like a few years ago, I was using it much more. And I would probably like send people there like, oh, look at my Pinterest board for this book that I'm writing. Right. But I just fell off of using it. I think also because I don't like the little web clipper thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On Chrome, it just is very invasive.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It was harder to use.
Let me put another thing up on my US whatever it's called, the bar and everything.
The bar. And then it's like it's slowed down.
The downfall of Pinterest. Okay, so we don't need any more on that.
Okay, so since we agree that Pinterest pretty much sucks right now, would you or have you used AI to develop images for reference for different things or even inspiration? Because I've seen some people do that, and I'm just, again, I'm an older millennial. I've seen the Terminator. I'm not a fan. I know I've seen applications of AI that are fascinating and that could be wonderful, but it's like the atomic bomb. The original thing behind the atomic bomb is good stuff, and it ended up being a bomb.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm like doubly concerned, but also I do use AI to a certain degree. So like I enjoy playing around with it. I have tried doing some inspirational images, like when writing this dragon book. So I was like, oh, can I do a dragon? So I was in Midjourney. It gives you what it gives you. It's like you want something, and I'm like, I have a thing in my mind, and it gives you what it gives you. But I do use it. I have a newsletter for writers that comes out every Monday, and I use it for the thumbnails. And that's when it's like, whatever it gives me is probably fine because I don't want anything specific. So I just type some stuff in and see what happens. And like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. That works.
That is brilliant. Yeah.
It always creeps. The hands always creep me out. It's like
the hands are creepy.
It's like,
and I think there's a very good chance that AI will destroy all of humanity. But like, also, billion-dollar companies have invested in it, so it's not going anywhere. So I kind of feel like, be careful. It's probably going to kill us all, but until then, we can use it, right? Like, why not?
No, I'll be one of those curmudgeons. I'll be in the front lines. Screw it.
Be nice to robots, says Rachel.
Yes, be nice to robots.
Yes. Okay, so one of my other questions was about personality types and events. So my strengths are not in visual representation. I'm not an artist. I'm not a painter. I'm not a graphs and charts kind of person. So my pathetic attempts at like charting things so that I can get a structure that is recognizable, or at least track when I can stack two characters like discoveries at the same time look like this. They look like connect the dots.
Ooh.
So like that's what I find in my very amateur story Bible. And I've tried Eon, I've tried like one other sort of timeline tracking things, and they just don't make sense to my brain. So the more stuff I put in, like it just feels like effort thrown away and time wasted. So is there a different way to sort of find that pattern and track, like, okay, my characters are doing this. Is there like a graphical way you can do this for non-graphical people? That's what I was going to ask. Because like digital just makes it worse because I don't know how to do it in my head, so I don't know how to translate it to digital.
Right. Yeah, for that kind of stuff, I'm either on pen and paper, and I don't even have the fancy dot graphs like you have. Like yours is a little bit more advanced than mine. It's really just like a line, and then like this happens, like a
Right,
line,
like
like a
bars.
timeline. Like
Yeah.
Or I just do a spreadsheet, and in a spreadsheet, it'll be if I go down. I guess you can go either way. I think I usually go down, and just like lining up different things in the different boxes. Everybody gets a column, and then if I'm lining things up. My brain works in spreadsheets a lot, but for things like that where you need kind of spatial awareness, I've tried Eon Timeline too, and I just didn't stick. Like as much as I love my tools and software and gadgets and things, Eon Timeline was like a step too far. I was like, I have to bring this back down to a little bit simpler.
We're finding all the market losers here in our chat. This didn't work. Throw that out.
That goes back to your comment. Use the tools that work for you. Don't use a tool just because there's some people. I still write using my Microsoft Word, and some people go like, oh, yeah, and I don't even pay attention to the bullshit that they say because it's like, dude, if it works for me, why bash it?
Right, exactly. Yeah, my best friend like writes in Word too, and it's just like, I don't know how you do that, but it works for you, and that's awesome. I need to all the Scrivener things. I need to do them. Once I got Scrivener, I was like, I need this in my life. I couldn't have written a novel without Scrivener. But like, if that's not how it works for you, please don't change it.
Yeah,
I've been meaning to use Scrivener for so long, and
I just switched from 2 to 3. Like with the last Nano, I got my upgrade, and I haven't had time to figure it out. But because I'm doing a recover of my series, I'm like trying to redo things and export them to Word, which I don't have, and then upload them to draft to digital. So I'm working blind because I don't own Word. And I'm like, draft to digital, can you help me? I don't know where this may have messed. And they have no hope, but we're getting it done.
I do have a question. When was the first time that you used a story Bible, and was it a game changer? Did you write a couple of novels and suddenly once you used a story Bible and it's like, oh, why haven't I always done this? Or did you always use it?
It took a while. So the first series, the beginning of my career, I was working on 2 series at once: Earthsinger Chronicles, which ended up being a total of 7 books, and then the Angelborn series that Margaret mentioned, which was supposed to be 3. 2 have come out. The third one may never see the light of day. Well, we don't know. It's been in the works for 10 years. But so I was going back and forth between those 2 series. And so, you'd spend a couple months away from a book. So I think I was working on 2 books had come out, and I was working on book 3 of Earthsinger Chronicles. And I was like, oh, I need organization. I don't know what's happening. I can't be rereading these, 90,000 word books at the time, every time I want to do something in book 3. So that's when I kind of first started getting something together, my first stab at a story Bible.
So it's in a series that was already started.
Yeah. And I went back and also because I had to rewrite that book again. So Earthsinger Chronicles was originally self-published, and I sold it to a traditional publisher. And then I did a big edit on those first 2 books. And so it was a good time to do it because I was kind of starting over. It's a little bit harder when, books are on the shelf, but you can still do that. Go back, just reread them, make the notes, because everything is canon. If the books are out and you're not going to change them, it's actually a little bit easier because those decisions have been made and you have to live up to them. You have to or live down to them. However, you can't change them. So that makes the story Bible, having things that are set in stone, a little bit easier than things that are kind of shifting.
Mm.
Let's see. I was going to ask about bibliography, and I think you might have heard this one in the back green room. Bibliography, transforming those sort of resources that you found and used to support your historical world, and transforming those into marketing resources on the other end.
Yeah.
Has it happened for you, and how did you do it? Because I have a whole bunch of bookmarks for my research, and I could, definitely repurpose those in terms of sharing blog posts. But when I've done those, they don't do very well. So I'm wondering if you've had different experiences or like packaged them a certain way, they do well.
Yeah, I'm trying to, with the Monsters We Defy, which was like really, I kept research before, but I had to, since that was my first actual real historical. As I was doing it, I was like, oh, this could be a good blog post. So I was making little notes in the research about, okay, pull this out and you could do an article about this and a guest post about that. And so it did help me there. And so it wasn't really, I don't really do it on my blog. Although I have been trying to post more of the historical stuff like on Instagram. So I collected a lot of images when I was doing research. And so, when the book came out, and then when the book with like the year anniversary or something like that, or when some of the actual historical events that I talk about happened, it was the 100-year anniversary, I was posting things like that. So it did actually help with some of the marketing in terms of guest posts and trying to submit to other people's blogs or other people's platforms.
And you had a bunch of images, you said, for Instagram. Where did you keep those, if not Pinterest?
Yeah, they were just in a folder on my hard drive. Right? Like we should have someone was asking in the chat about a Pinterest alternative.
Oh yeah, is there a new alternative?
I do not know. Nothing that I can think of that does the same thing, really. Yeah, unfortunately. For a while I was trying to keep things on Tumblr, but that wasn't really working out as easily. So they sit on a folder in my hard drive called images inside of my
I mean, I've
folder.
heard that you can take web pages and put them into Scrivener. That did not work on my last version. So I'll try it again in Scrivener 3. Yeah, and that could be a good way. If you don't have too many, like me, I don't know if it would like load up the file or whatnot.
It's not, they're usually not that big, not huge.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a great answer. I guess guest posting. Oh God, that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. You talked about a magic ring, and I was going to make a joke about that because I've just been rewatching Lord of the Rings, and so I'm glad to see a magic ring in your historical fantasy.
I don't remember why I decided it had to be a ring, but yeah, I was probably rewatching Lord of the Rings at a certain point and just like seep into my subconscious, like, oh, let's do a ring. No one's done that before.
And someone's put like something of their essence into it, even. So I liked it.
Yeah. That detail of my novel is precious. It's so precious.
And you already used that word earlier on the stream today, so that almost snuck right past me, JD. Wow. All right. How was it being on the AWC? Like interacting with folks, comments, like promoting? What was that process like since you guys have been on?
Yeah, it's really cool. I think you guys are doing an awesome job with that. Like I think for this year, so this was this year. I'm trying to remember because I've done 2 years. And my brain is like mush. But I was on vacation, so I was like here. I woke up early. I was on the West Coast, and this premiered at like in the morning. So I was up early so that I could be in the comments, and it was really fun. It's kind of weird watching yourself. It's very strange, and then being like, oh gosh, but interacting with people while you're watching it takes the pressure off of like doing it live, and also trying to interact with people. So.
Yeah, for me, I normally don't go live. I've done like a handful of lives, and seeing a lot of new people and people interested in the topic, I was like, oh, okay, I have to protect myself. I was like, there's going to be like, handful of people. And suddenly there was like a crowd. I was like, what the fuck?
Right.
So that was cool.
Yeah. Good. Good deal. Good deal. We get people who are nervous about what the requirements are, and I'm like, it's literally 2 fields that you have to answer 1 question each. Like, the application is very simple. So, in case anyone is interested in participating, we have all the entries in, but if you want to volunteer and be on the back end, be one of our chat moderators, we certainly have, open opportunities for that. I'm gonna drop the link into the chat right now. I call it the vol call, volunteer call.
And actually, some extra questions about story Bibles. I don't know if you. I had to step away because I've had 5 teas and a bottle. Transparency. Do you show people your story Bibles, or do you use it for marketing? That's something that I was talking about with Margaret a bit, and I think that's an opportunity for like interesting marketing and just here's how we make the sausage.
Right. I have considered, I don't really show people, I don't show readers, because there's like spoilers, and especially if a series is
Oh, yep.
ongoing. But yeah, I've considered doing it. I guess for a completed series, it wouldn't be any harm. Mine are a little chaotic though, and I don't know if other people would be able to like read through my. I mean, it's not chicken scratch, 'cause it's typed, but it's still like the that version of this is how my mind works, and it makes sense to me. It may or may not. These notes might not make sense to anyone else.
It's like Ben just had a alignment chart stream about authors and alignment charts. Would it be my story Bible is chaotic neutral or
Right?
chaotic evil? Or
Something it's on the chaotic spectrum. Yeah, maybe neutral, maybe not quite evil, but some days, who knows?
That's awesome. That's fun.
And how much of the story Bible actually makes it into a book?
Well, it's really the other way around. Like the only stuff that's in the, well, that's not true. I think probably 80% of the story Bible, maybe 80 to 90% is from the book. And there's another 10% where I was playing around with something, or I did it in a draft and I changed it in the final one. Aside from like the 500 years of history, which was never in the actual book, stuff I needed to know. And sometimes there's notes, like some of my books have epigraphs for every chapter. And like the fantasy books, I will have, usually the epigraphs are from an in-world text. So I have to write some sort of in-world text and then pull things from out from it, but I don't use all of it. So there's like cutting room floor type stuff. But in the same way that I write lean, like a lot of writers, their first draft is big and they cut. I write very lean and I have to add. So my second draft is usually like almost twice as long as my first draft. The story Bible is kind of like that too. It's lean. So I'm trying to only put in what I really need, aside from things that, I've changed my mind about.
Do you have a different place where you put like maybes? Because one of the things I was talking about was questions. Like I get overwhelmed by the questions because there's no white space on the right side of Scrivener. It's just box after box after box. My first go around when I come back, and I'm just like, I don't want to do this. Like I will run away. Like flee. I can't do this. Right. It's overwhelming. So I'm like, I want to figure out a different way to come back and treat those things. And I was trying to ask some people in the chat. They're like, make it a game, make it a treasure hunt. I don't know how to do that exactly. I will think about it.
Do you put your questions as comments?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I have a separate file, a document in Scrivener that's just questions. It's just bullet points. Whenever I have a question, I just dump it in there. Because I wouldn't like to see all those comments. That would be overwhelming to me too.
Yeah. I'm like, maybe I put it on strips of paper, put it in a cup, and like take out like a TBR list or something.
Or note cards. I have a whole note card system too. That like I use a lot of different systems. So at a certain point in a book, the note cards come out, and it's like I get like this box full of note cards that I have to write with
like
questions.
A recipe card. Yeah, I have one of those.
And it's all the questions and things I have to decide, or ideas that I have that I could maybe, can this be this? Can this be that?
There it is.
Question I have. This is a possibility.
Yeah.
And a maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. One of your points was on plants and agriculture. And I just want to say, like, I am not a farmer person. And so I had to look up when you sow, when you harvest so many times. Here's my list of like the months and like the things you do in a garden every month. And I was just like, had to look at this 6 times every writing session.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm always looking up like, okay, when is corn? How does corn work? And because What plants they have to harvest something in August. Do you actually harvest in August? Like, what do you harvest in August in Alabama or like wherever it is? Like, yeah, I don't know anything about plants. I have a black thumb. I've been trying to have this plant. Like 2 of my plants died, just like they were alive for a week. I have a self-watering pot. They still died. So yeah, it's all research.
Yeah. Good deal. Yeah. And I like the fact that when you had one in Washington, D.C., where you said you knew most of the stuff. And like, I remember reading parts about like the triangle and going, I have lived there. I know what she means by these triangles because there's diagonal streets and like there's a little grassy knoll or whatever.
Right?
Yeah. And that being really, really helpful. So yeah, use what you can, use the familiar.
And also Google Maps, Google Earth. I guess it's not Google Earth anymore, but on Google Maps when you can see the actual land and like, because I do that stuff in San Francisco, which I used to live in Oakland, but I haven't lived there in a long, long time. So it's like my memory plus, okay, what does that street look like from overhead? And like, what is this intersection? Or when you can go down and walk and like, do the whole, what do they call that? Where the Google drove around and took pictures of everything.
Yeah.
That's super helpful.
Yeah.
And then people are like in the pictures, like,
right? Yeah.
They're blurred. All the licenses, all the faces.
Yeah, they're blurred.
Oh boy. And I dig I saying I finished story Bible, kind of big. Yep.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Mine never get big because that requires consistency, and we'll see. I am working on a new book that I have like a very lean draft of, which is not my usual, and like 2 half pages of a series idea. So maybe this will be the one. Maybe this will be the one that I do a series 504. Anyone want to make any like resolutions? All right, here on this live stream, I will try to make a story Bible for this work in progress that I'm going to be like hoping comes out sometime this year. So yeah,
Yoda, do or do not. There is
no try.
I disagree with Yoda. But I think we've probably taken enough time and had enough fun for one night. So just the reminders for AWC, we're coming up in June. Shannon's going to be back in a few days, so we'll get some more updates on speakers and the whole process for 2024's conference. Until then, sign up as a volunteer, follow the people and rewatch the streams in those playlists, ask questions, subscribe to channels. It's all encouraged. I have a couple things. There we go. Buy the merch. I have a couple things coming up. Tomorrow we've got Authortubers host karaoke. I know JD's got a cough, so he's out. But Leslye, if you want to join tomorrow at the same time, it's super fun. Our theme is reinvention for tomorrow. Barrett will be co-hosting.
Nice.
And then next Friday, we've got Fireside Chats with Denise Williams, who is a romance author. I'm very excited to have her on. I've read 2 of her books so far, and they're awesome. So very excited to do a little creative exercise with her. And then it'll be like February. So before you know it, we'll have Black Authortube Readathon, 3rd annual. Very excited. So do you guys have anything coming up you wanted to direct people's attention to?
I am actually doing a workshop on January 29th on revision. So it's for members of my Substack. If you are at all interested, you can go to myimaginaryfriends.net/footnotes. I will type it in the chat. Okay. And yeah, that should be fun. We're talking about revision because I did a whole NaNoWriMo thing in Preptober. And so we took December off. And in January, we're going to talk about how to revise what you may or may not have done for NaNoWriMo.
Not yet. Haven't touched it since November 29th.
Yes. And for me, we're going to get finally the 3rd one is going to be done. I am pushing because I'm also going to be participating in the Puerto Rico Comic Con in March, the end of March. If you're in Puerto Rico, by all means, say hi. If you're not in Puerto Rico, why not? You should go. You should go. And I am super focused on that. I have other ideas and I have other plans and wishes and stuff like that. But my resolution, even though I'm not into resolutions, is to focus 100% on one project. And anything else is very on the sides. I'm working on the blog, and I will be more active on my YouTube channel. But beyond that, it's just going to be all beyond.
All beyond. You have a cover for the third book already?
I'm in talks with the artist finally. Give me 2 weeks. Give me 2 to 3 weeks, and there will be.
All right, we will check in then. And great live. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck with your story Bible or author project of the moment.
Yes.
Happy reading. Take care, everybody.
Good
Bye.
night.
Ciao, ciao.